G'day everyone, welcome to UFC Fight Night in London, in front of a packed arena in London. Volkov versus Aspinall live betting show on Punt School and on the Trademate Sports YouTube channel also. As always, I'll be going through the main card today, giving you guys my thoughts on the six fights on the main card, and also any betting tips or betting angles I can give you guys for this weekend. So we will be going through six fights. As I mentioned, we will be going through Jai Herbert versus Ilia Topuria. We will be going through Molly McCann versus Luana Carolina, Gunnar Nelson versus Takashi Sato, Paddy Pimblett versus Rodrigo Vargas, Arnold Allen versus Dan Hooker, and the main event, Alexander Volkov versus Tom Aspinall. Of course, we are live, so anyone has any comments, questions, opinions about anything I'm saying, fire them through and join in the conversation. We've already got one comment here. G'day, Sophie. How are you? All right, let's get cracking with our first one today. And as always, I have to be, slightly respectful to those who pay a subscription to MMA Punt School. Can't give you a bet for every single fight, but I'll give you one or two for the weekend, and hopefully that'll set you on your way. Herbert versus Topuria. Odds for this one, as you can see here, very short for Topuria here, 1.17, and Herbert at 5s here on Top Sport. Just remove this from the screen. Yeah, so originally this was scheduled to be one of the prelim fights, I believe, but it's been moved up just recently. So, it's a great fight. It really is a great fight. Herbert, Topuria moving up to lightweight for his first fight in the UFC, probably his first career fight at lightweight. Actually, normally fights at featherweight. He has fought at bantamweight too, so he seems to be going up the weight classes. But I believe this is just it's like a reasonably short notice fight for him. And, he had weight troubles a couple of months ago at featherweight. So I think this is just a quick short notice fight for him to, just to get back in the game. It's been a while since he's fought. And, just get a quick fight in there at lightweight. And I think from what I've read, it's going to go back down to featherweight. But keeping that in mind, he's at a huge size advantage here. I think he's only 5'7", whereas Jai Herbert's around 6 foot. I can look that up for you guys quickly now, so I'm not getting that completely wrong. Yeah, Jai Herbert 6'1" and 77 reach, and Topuria is 5'7" and 69-inch reach. So he really is at a huge disadvantage, his size-wise here. But Herbert really probably he won't be defending takedowns all night, but that's Topuria's easiest path to victory here by far. He's had a bit of trouble with wrestlers in the past, or just his takedown defense in general. Had a bit of trouble with Moicano. Slight problem with Trinaldo. But clearly on the feet, he has an advantage here. The problem is Topuria's no slouch on the feet. He's great. He's got great boxing. We saw in I think it was the Damon Jackson fight, especially. He's a new age fighter where he's just really good everywhere. So he is a bit of a nightmare opponent for Herbert. Because if he gets Herbert down, the size advantage kind of goes away, and you just get the feeling that it'll be a matter of time before Topuria locks up some kind of submission or just lands some decent ground and pound on him. I think there's quite a big skill gap there on the ground. And like I said, Topuria is no slouch on the feet, which makes it worse, because when he's going to be standing with Topuria, not only he'll be, very scared about the possible takedown coming in, but if he worries too much about the takedown, he'll cop an overhand of some kind, or some kind of big shot. So yeah, Herbert has a huge size advantage here, which helps, and it should help him keep this at range for periods of the fight. But you just kind of feel like if Herbert can't get him out of there sometime early in the fight, or early in round one especially, that it could turn into, him being on his back for large periods of this fight, and either getting finished or losing a pretty convincing decision. Yeah, so like I said, I think Herbert, he's not shocking on the ground, but Topuria's pretty elite. So I think Herbert's only chance of winning this fight is by KO. I couldn't imagine him winning a decision, because I think if he's able to, if he's winning on the feet versus Topuria, and avoiding all these takedowns, which I find very hard to believe, then Topuria's got to have a really good chin to be able to stem the attack of Herbert. So I think his chances of decision are very low. So I mean, for this, I'll get up there's no prop markets out for Top Sport at the moment, unfortunately, but I'd be trying to side with Herbert in some kind of way with the knockout. I think if you can get 8-ish, 7-8, something like that, for Herbert to win by knockout, then I think that's probably your best way to go with this one. The other angle would be Topuria to win inside the distance. From what I've seen off the top of my head, I think he's around 1.5, 1.6 in some places. Just seems a little bit too short for me, considering, Topuria, he is going to be undersized in this fight. Like, I don't think he's going to be able to just get Herbert down every time he tries to. So, yeah, I think inside the distance, you'd want something closer to that 2 mark, I think. Anyway, but yeah, so I think if you best value play you can make, just maybe a small play on Herbert KO, would be what I'd be doing. All right. We shall move on to Molly McCann versus Luana Carolina. Now, I think this is kind of going to be a theme for a lot of this card, or a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is the crowd factor being in London. They're going to be heavily biased towards the UK fighters, obviously, or at least not biased at all towards the non-UK fighters. And I think this is a perfect example of the kind of fight where the crowd could have a major influence on the outcome of this fight. But I'll get into that. Because obviously, if fights do go to a decision and they're in London, I'm not saying, the judges are scammy or anything like that. But the problem is the crowd will be so heavily biased, and they'll make bigger noises when the UK fighter lands a strike. They'll be cheering louder just in general. And if it's a close round, there's a much better chance they're going to go the way of the UK fighter, or the London fighter, or, the Irish fighter, whatever the case is. So that's something you have to keep in mind for all of these fights. If you've got a 50-50 fight and you cannot separate their skills, then you should probably lean towards the UK fighter, and they got the home support too. I mean, mentality-wise, it might hurt them a little bit. Maybe they get a little bit overzealous, but in some cases, it can really help them. It can encourage them, motivate them, etc. Anyway, babbled along there a little bit, but it's a good basis to go forward from as I go into this one. McCann versus Carolina. I think this is a pretty similar fight to McCann's last bout with Kim. I think it will stay on the feet mostly. I think maybe McCann can work a takedown, but I don't think she has much of an advantage there. I'm thinking I would say Caroline is a little bit better, has a little bit better takedown defense than Kim. So if she was struggling for the most part to get Kim down, I don't think she will be able to. Maybe she'll land 1 takedown at most, maybe 2, depending on how much work she's done on her wrestling. But I don't look at this and think that McCann's going to be able to out-wrestle Carolina. But I do think there could be a lot of clinching, up against the fence kind of work, which I kind of see as quite an even exchange. I mean, Carolina's size advantage helps a lot there too. She did some good work against Loopy, but I think Loopy was even smaller than McCann. She's being a strawweight, so I don't see really any huge advantage there in the clinch for either of them. I think the biggest advantage in this fight that either of these fighter, the biggest weapon that they have that they've used before is Molly's ability to just pressure fighters and make it a dogfight. She's not a pretty striker at all. She's basically a brawler. Not a winging crazy kind of punches brawler, but she's not too far away from that. And yeah, that's not going to work against most or a lot of fighters in this division, especially the top echelon. But Carolina, for me, she's too willing to get pushed up against the fence, against the cage. It happened way too often for me in that Loopy fight, and that was at the hands of a strawweight. I think she's too willing to give away the center of the octagon. So unless she fixes that in this fight, I can see her having quite a long night being pushed up against the fence, and also, just being worked up against the fence. I've noticed a tendency when she fought Loopy that when she got up against the fence, she would leave her chin in the air just a little bit. I think a big overhand for McCann could be a great weapon here. McCann's got power, it seems. She hasn't got any finishes in the UFC, but it does seem like she does have a bit of power. So I wouldn't be all that surprised if she got her up against the fence, worked some big punches, and dropped her. I mean, a lot of people will say, okay, Carolina's got the huge reach advantage here. She could just pick her off from the outside, which she could. And a lot of good strikers in this weight division should be able to do with McCann. But for me, Carolina doesn't have the same presence. Like we saw in the McCann fight versus Kim, that Kim, pieced her up with jabs and straight punches constantly, but she just walked through them, got her up against the fence and went to work. And I kind of see a similar thing from Carolina. I don't think she has enough power and enough willingness to, go forward and trade in the pocket with her and be able to stem that forward pressure. I can't see Carolina just being able to, pick a jab, move, and just circle the octagon. I can't see her doing that for 3 rounds, not from what I've seen so far. So I think, Carolina's path to victory is if she can dominate in those clinches and somehow keep McCann on the back foot and stop her from coming in all the time. I just can't see her doing that for at least 2 rounds to get a decision. In this fight, I don't believe. I think the odds are right where they are now. So you've got McCann at 1.69 at TopSport and 2.17 for Carolina. I think they are right where they are now. I priced McCann at about 1.7. So, I think that's just about right where it is. I think the most likely scenario in this fight is, McCann will be G'd up from the crowd. She'll be forward pressuring, probably cop a lot of shots coming in, but overall she'll be the one making things work. Getting her up against the cage, unleashing some bombs. Yeah, there'll be periods in the fight where she just gets tagged up by jabs trying to come in, and maybe she could get stopped like that. But for me, Carolina just doesn't have that enough presence for me to think that she can do that for 3 rounds. And the home crowd in the judging scenarios where you have a fighter constantly walking forward versus, and maybe not landing as many punches as the one going backwards, But, the one going forward is being very aggressive, the hometown fighter. I think the judges could be swayed by that, and that's why I would be leaning towards, the home crowd gives McCann a big edge, I think, in this one. Okay. Let's go to Gunnar Nelson and Takashi Sato. Another fight with quite a big difference in odds here. As you can see, Nelson at 1.18 and Sato at 4.8. So both of these fighters are coming off massive layoffs. So this is Gunnar's first fight in about 2.5 years and Sato's first fight in about 1.5 years. Basically a grappler versus striker bout here. Grappler being Nelson and the striker being Sato. I would say, though, that the gap on the ground or the gap in the grappling and the wrestling is a lot bigger than the gap is on the feet. I just think Sato will he'll struggle a lot. I think if this hits the floor, which it probably will, I think it could be only a matter of time before the fight ends. I just think there's a huge difference in levels here in terms of their grappling and their groundwork. I mean, Nelson's one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in this division, and Sato's been subbed, numerous times on the ground, and you can tell he's not that comfortable there. So, and in terms of the wrestling, Sato just hasn't shown me anything that makes me think he'll be able to defend most of Nelson's takedowns. So, on the feet, I mean, Sato does have a slight advantage, I would say. He's got a bit more power. He does have some really nice straight punches. And, I wouldn't be surprised if he tagged Nelson once or twice. I mean, Nelson's coming off a big layoff. Sure, there'll be a little bit of ring rust there. If he's just a little bit off with one of his entries, or he's just a little bit hesitant or just, wants to stay on the feet for a little bit too long. I think Sato has a little edge there on the feet, but I don't think it's huge. Nelson's pretty hard to hit. He moves in and out pretty nicely. So yeah, I think if Nelson can just avoid a big punch on the feet or kick, it should be a reasonably easy night for him. If you want to back Sato, as I've shown here, the props are not out yet for Top Sport on this one. But if you want to back Sato, I'd be looking at, 7, 8, something like that for him to win by KO. I think, it's pretty similar to the Topuria Herbert fight. I really struggle to see how Sato or Herbert win a decision here. I think, if they don't get a knockout, they're in big trouble. And then for Nelson, once again, you probably want to be looking for inside the distance or maybe submission too. I've seen you can get 1.9 for submission in some places, which I think is pretty good. There's just always a worry for me that, he'll decide I want to punch him instead of submitting him once he gets to the ground. So that's always a little bit of a worry. But for this one, I don't think there's anything huge there, but maybe Sato by KO, 7, 8, 9, something like that is your best value play. And if you want to go with Nelson, maybe submission or inside the distance at around 1.8, something like that. So that's where I'll be going on that one. But let's move on. Paddy Pimblett versus Rodrigo Vargas. 1.2 for Pimblett and 4.6 for Vargas. Once again, I mean, these matchups are a lot of them are very similar to each other in this kind of grappler versus striker mold. Firstly, on Pimblett, I was a little bit worried about Pimblett, just his escapades after his last win. You could tell he was certainly enjoying things. He ballooned up in weight quite a lot. But just, listening to a few interviews of him, it seems like it's something he's used to. After a fight, he just likes to eat lots of crap food, drink a lot, and put on weight. It's kind of, I assume it's kind of his just break from fighting, which I think's, not really a concern for me. I think it's, if anything, it's a good thing to get that break away after a long camp. So I was worried about that. Or that was something I was keeping in mind when betting this one. But for me, it's a non-factor. But yeah, I think overall, Paddy's biggest edge here is in the wrestling and the grappling, and that's his easiest path to victory here. Especially with that being Vargas's weak point. On the feet, I think Vargas is a better striker. He's more technical, but I don't think, Pimblett just stood with Vendramini for one round basically, and took his best shots. I think he's very confident in his chin, which, it obviously goes pretty well considering how he went last fight. He did get rocked for a bit, but he survived. He survived pretty well. And also just in general, like Vargas' striking's good, but it's not, he's not some phenomenon on the feet. I don't think it's anything that Pimblett wouldn't have seen before in his life. So I'm sure Paddy will get cracked a couple of times. But the thing is, Vargas has lots to worry about. He has to worry about the grappling, the wrestling, and the fact that Pimblett can crack. He's probably happy to take his shot. He's happy to brawl with him. And yeah, I just get the sense that Pimblett could overwhelm him a little bit with punches on the feet, to a takedown, to a rear naked choke, all that kind of stuff. So I think 120 for Pimblett's about right. I think, like the other fights, Vargas's chances lean heavily towards an early KO. I struggle to see him winning a decision or getting a sub. I just really struggle to see how he would defend takedowns from Pimblett all night and avoid, some kind of submission on the ground. I think if you wanted to back inside the distance for Paddy, I'd be looking at somewhere around 1.9. The London crowd will be hyping him up like all the UK fighters on the card. So there's a good chance he could get a finish here. But yeah, I think it's just another one where I'm not really seeing too much. I think Vargas's KO odds, I think I can't remember what I've seen those, but they didn't really interest me that much. Don't think he has like overwhelming power. So yeah, I haven't really got too much of betting insight on that one, but yeah, I would assume Pimblett's most likely going to win this one inside the distance. Okay, 2 more fights to go, and this is where it gets very, very interesting and very competitive. Arnold Allen versus Dan Hooker. A very, very exciting fight here in the featherweight division. Firstly, I'll there are props out for this one, but they don't really interest me at the moment at Top Sport. You got Arnold Allen at 1.8, and then you've got Dan Hooker at 201. Big size advantage here for Hooker. This is another one where I should probably inform you all of how big the size advantage is. So Dan Hooker's 6 foot and a 75-inch reach. And Arnold Allen is 5'8" and a 70-inch reach. So pretty decent size advantage here for Hooker, who's moved down to flyweight from lightweight. As some of you know, he did some great work at lightweight, made it all the way to a title eliminator against Chandler and lost. But, he's gone 5 rounds with Dustin Poirier, with Paul Felder, with the best of the best in the lightweight division. He's on his day, he's a top 10 lightweight. So this is a big step up in competition for Arnold Allen. In terms of the move for Hooker, I listened to a lot of interviews from Hooker, and the thing that I like about what I'm hearing is that previously when he fought at featherweight, there wasn't the the same procedures and weight cutting measures around. He didn't, there was not as much information around for him to know how to do a healthy weight cut. And it seems like that's available to him now. And if anything, it's going to be a lot easier than it used to be with the help of the Performance Institute. And he's already cut down to 145. He's done a test cut. His coaches didn't want him to move to featherweight, but since he did that test cut and he spent time there, done training, etc., that he's convinced them that it's a good move for his career. So the only question I would have is his chin. Maybe it's a little bit more weakened, a little bit more dehydrated, but he has done this cut before with less help, and he's never been knocked out at featherweight. So I'm confident that this cut is good for him, and it's a good step in his career, and that'll be a positive move. I don't think it's going to affect his fighting. I think it'll mostly stay on the feet. I think Allen has the faster hands, and he'll look to dart in and out of range, get his punches in nice and quick, and get out, being at a pretty sizable reach disadvantage here. Whereas Hooker will probably stalk a little bit more, land shots from the outside, look to clinch with Allen where he can, and that's where Hooker is most dangerous. That's probably his biggest edge here. So I kind of see, Hooker dominating the center, Arnold backing up or circling the octagon, coming in, landing a few punches, come out, or at least trying to, and Hooker will just try to keep distance and prod away. I think Hooker's biggest advantage is his size. And like I said, clinching him in the center of the cage will be effective for him, elbows, knees. He might even try use some wrestling, I think. I think they're pretty even in that department. But once again, he's going to be stronger. He's going to be the bigger fighter there. So I wouldn't even be surprised if Hooker got a takedown or two, if timed well. But, Allen's got solid takedown defense. So I don't think it's going to be, a massive, massive factor in the fight. But once again, I think the size advantage is the thing which makes me really lean towards Hooker in this one. His experience, obviously, he's been in there a lot longer. He has fought much better competition than Allen, and Allen's best win in his career was against Sadiq Yusuf. So it's a massive step up. Obviously, he's got the upside, Allen. He hasn't fought, I think, in about a year, has it been? Yeah, about a year. So I'm sure he's made some great improvements since then. But for me, I've got Hooker as favorite, just through experience, size advantage, etc. But like I said, Allen's got a lot of upside. So I price Allen at around Hooker at 1.85. As you can see on my screen here, you can get Hooker for 2.01. I think that's a good edge. So, I think if you can get Hooker at 1.95 or above, 1.9 and above, if you want a small little edge, I price Hooker at 1.85. That's all I'll say. So that would definitely be a bet for me for this card. 201, I'd lock that in. Maybe a chance that could blow out a little bit more. I am seeing when a lot of these odds this week that the hometown favourites, the UK fighters, or a guy like Gunnar Nelson or whatever, who's going to be the favourite in terms of who the crowd's going to be rooting for. I am seeing that their odds are coming in. I think people are really hanging on to this home crowd factor. But for me, if you can get, I think, Hooker you could potentially get Hooker at 2.1 at some point before the fight. Weigh-ins will probably be in about 24 hours, which I think could bear quite a bit on this. I could see once people see that there's quite a big size advantage when they face off, they might think, all right, I think I'm going to have to back Hooker here. And then the other way around could be if Hooker doesn't look too great on the scales, then people could, you could see some money come in for Allen. So keep that in mind as you place your bets. But yeah, let's move on to the main event. As you can see on the screen here, Volkov 206 and Aspinall 1.76. I think it'll mostly be on the feet. I haven't seen we haven't seen a lot of Tom's wrestling, only really in the UFC at least, only that blast double on Arlovsky. But in general, Volkov's takedown defense is pretty good. So it's going to be pretty, Aspinall is going to have to show a very good level of wrestling to be able to take Volkov down. I think Aspinall will employ. I think overall, a lot of my opinions on this fight are based off Volkov's last fight against Marcin Tybura. I was pretty unimpressed with Volkov's performance in that. It looked to me, and maybe it was just maybe he had a bad camp, or maybe it was one of those ones where he just thought, I beat Tybura X times out of, 8 times out of 10, let's just say. He's not really on my level. I'm not too motivated for this fight, but I'll take it because it's a reasonably easy win for me. That's kind of like Volkov just looked like he took a big step down in performance from what he produced against Cyril Gane to what he produced against Marcin Tybura. This could just be a sign of Volkov aging, getting older in his fight career, and he's on the downward spiral. Or it could just be he wasn't that motivated for the Tybura fight and just did enough to get the decision victory, which is how it kind of panned out. He only, wasn't a 30-27. It was a 29-28 victory over Tybura, who's never really excelled at that top level. And it wasn't it was pretty clear, but it wasn't a dominant 29-28. But anyway, I think Aspinall will just employ a pretty similar game plan to what Marcin did in that last fight, or at least what Tybura tried to do, and he was quite successful with. So getting on the front foot, getting in Volkov's face, get Volkov moving backwards, which eliminates his kicks, which are his biggest weapon. Not eliminates them, but stifles them to a certain point. Look to engage in the pocket, push him up against the fence, wear on Volkov, drag him into deep water. I would assume Aspinall probably has better cardio, better gas tank than Volkov. Volkov looked tired, or not overwhelmingly tired, but fatigued for large portions of that Tybura fight. And I can just see, Aspinall trying to drag him into it. Just wear on Volkov, take out those, just get him going backwards, take away those kicks, and make it a little bit of a dogfight without, getting into a complete shootout with Volkov, because he's obviously a very good striker. Think he will have a speed advantage, Aspinall. But my biggest worry for Aspinall is he does leave his chin out there a bit. Like when he's happy to really engage with fighters, and he's got lightning fast hands for the heavyweight division, but, he does leave his chin out there a bit, which is a bit of a worry. So I am a little bit worried he could get clipped by Volkov. And also this is, a big step up in competition for him, going from beat Arlovsky in his second last fight. And then he's gone to, oh God, what was his last? Should know this off the top of my head, but I'm having a bit of a brain fade here. Spivak, of course. Yes. It's a big step up in competition, and it's a big step up in striking. So, he's young, getting better every fight. He's got the upside. I just think that if you remove Tybura from that last fight, if you were saying, all right, the Aspinall of today is going to face the he's going to face the Volkov of that fight in, I think it was October last year or November. If you just take out Tybura, put Aspinall in, I think I think he wins that fight a lot more often than Volkov does, because Tybura, Aspinall's a lot faster, a lot better striking, probably better wrestling, just all round better than Tybura by quite a distance. And Volkov only 29, 28 in a pretty uninspiring performance, I would say. So if Aspinall can just get in his face, get him going backwards and avoid a big punch, I think this will be a really good night for him. If he wants to make this a pretty point fight on the outside with Volkov, it becomes a lot more even. But I think Aspinall would be stupid to employ any kind of game plan like that. Maybe he will, but I think his best path to victory is what I've described earlier. So I personally have priced Aspinall around 1.7 to 1.75. Also factoring in the home crowd, and also factoring in that Volkov's had a few complications getting to the fight, I believe, with being Russian and the war and all that kind of stuff. I don't know too many details around that, but I know that there was a chance that Volkov wasn't going to be able to make it to the fight, so I assume it's not been the perfect fight camp for him. But as you can see on my screen, 1.76 for Aspinall. I think these odds are about right. Maybe there's a tiny bit of value there left in Aspinall. But I price him around 1.7 to 1.75. So I think they're just about right now. In terms of the props, as I bet Aspinall earlier in the week when he was 1.99. So so I haven't really had much of a look at them. But obviously, if Aspinall's going to have success in this fight, his best path to victory is going to be getting a knockout, I would assume, followed by a decision not too far away. So, I'm not going to give too much advice on the props there just because I haven't even had a look. So, but yeah, like I've said, Aspinall, if you can get him, 1.8 and above, I think he's a decent bet. All right, and that brings us to the end of the show. We are, we've got one more card next week. We've been going 8 weeks in a row by the end of next week. So, then I'll get a nice little break, which will be good. For those who have not subscribed to MMA Punt School and you're interested, head over to my website. As you can see here, vellabetting.com. You can see my results with the channel and how we're going. You can see, and you can sign up there too if you're interested. So, obviously you'll get all of my bets throughout the week. Like I said, we bet Aspinall 1.99 earlier in the week. I think Grundy at around 1.75 or something like that, and he's into 1.5s now. So you'll get all the good stuff earlier in the week. But yeah, like and subscribe, and I will be back next week with fight talk on the Dorcas versus Blades fight cards. That'll be good fun. Have a good weekend, guys. Cheers.